Shabbat Shalom. It is officially Shabbat at the time of this recording. No hooting and hollering. I am gonna pray. Praise the Father. Oh, Father God, Lord. Bless this Bible again. Let me speak the words that you need people to hear. Feed my mouth. And get out of this. We need out of this. Let the people get what they need. Let me get what I need. Seeking first the kingdom and being filled up with your Holy Spirit. And in full submission and surrender to your will. In Yeshua name. In Yeshua name. Okay. Got this dope chair here. This is not my house, as you can see. This is also not a laboratory. It's just got a really cool grow light for sprouts. I'm being hosted right now by the 12 tribes, who are wonderful people out here doing the will of Yah. I'm going to teach you the word of Yah as I understand it. I have water and a muffin. If you ever get to go to a yellow deli, take your opportunity. They are incredible bakers. They have gifts of Yahweh to make food and to spread the word, and very, very astute on the word. I am not very, very astute on setting up a camera. So let's cook like that. Move that there. First time with the tripod. I think that like setting up the tripod, like you crank threads on a machine screw, you're gonna keep getting different, variables of tightness, you know what I mean? So this is also plastic. So good? Cool, thank you. Thank you, Father. Somebody just came and gave me a thumbs up. I'm out here because their whole concept here is Acts 2. Acts 2. When the day of the festival of Shabbat had come, they were all with one mind in one place. And so that and Acts 2:44, and all those who believed were together and had all in common, and sold their possession and property and divided them among all, as anyone might have need. And day by day, continuing with one mind in the set apart place and breaking bread from house to house, they ate their food with gladness and simplicity of heart, praising Elohim and having favor with all the people. And the master added to the assembly those who were being saved day by day. Praise Yah. So their other thing is Acts 4. And having heard that, they lifted up their voice to Elohim with one mind and said, Yahuwah, you are Elohim, who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and all that is in them, and who by the mouth of your servant Dawid have said, why did the nations rage and the people plot in vain? The sovereigns of the earth stood up, and the rulers were gathered together against Yahuwah and against his Messiah. For truly in this city there were gathered together against your set-apart one, servant Yeshua, against your set-apart servant Yeshua, whom you appointed, both Herodes and Pontius Pilate, with the nations and the people of Israel, to do whatever your hand and your purpose decided before to be done. And now, Yahuwah, look on their threats and give to your servants all boldness to speak your word by stretching out your hand for healing and signs and wonders to take place through the name of your set-apart servant Yeshua. And when they had prayed, the place where they came together was shaken, and they were all filled with the set-apart spirit and spoke the word of Elohim with boldness. And so basically they live in community. And so where I'm going with that, because he just gave me the thumbs up, is that what you don't realize by not having people who are truly in the spirit around you is that sometimes what you need, like your Father knows what you need before you pray it. I want to say it's Isaiah. I have it right here. It's in Isaiah 65:24. And it shall be that before they call, I answer, and while they are still speaking, I hear. So whatever you need, he already knows it. Messiah says it as well. Your Father knows what you need before you say it. I think it's Matthew 6. We'll start at 6:3. But when you do a kind deed, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your kind deed shall be in secret. And your Father who sees in secret shall himself reward you openly. And when you pray, you shall not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the congregations and on the corners of the streets to be seen by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward. But you, when you pray, go into your room, and having shut your door, pray to your Father who is in the secret place. And your Father who sees in secret shall reward you openly. And when praying, do not keep on babbling like the nations, for they think that they shall be heard for their many words. Therefore do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. Matthew 6:8. So what we're seeing here is that the Father knows what you need before you ask him. And the issue with being a truly devout Christian follower of Messiah and living in the world is that there's not other people around you who are in the set apart spirit who can deliver what the Father needs, right? So like I was sitting here wondering, like, okay, like I said, it's all things in common, give everything up, so that it's not just the one anymore as the individual, it is the one as in one body of Messiah. And the Father sends my roommate, Holcomb, who hopefully he'll meet tomorrow, to come and just open the door and give me a thumbs up, that everything's good. And, he's checking on me, but he's also affirming what I needed affirmed in that, hey, you're good, like nobody can hear you, you're not waking anybody up, it's 10:10, so praise Yah. That is the gift of the Spirit that I haven't seen. I saw it at on deployment in Barnsdall, and I saw it a little bit in Vermont this weekend, but it is accelerated here because the things don't have to be spoken. Everybody is working in the Spirit. Everybody is living in the Spirit. So they just act when the Spirit directs them. It's beautiful. Esther chapter 6. On that night, the sleep of the sovereign fled, and he commanded to bring the book of the records of the annals, and they were read before the sovereign. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the sovereign's eunuchs, the doorkeepers who had sought to lay hands on sovereign Ahasuerus. Then the sovereign said, "What has been done in value or in greatness to Mordecai for this?" And the sovereign's servants who attended him said, "Naught has been done for him." And the sovereign said, "Who is in the court?" Now Haman had come into the outer court of the sovereign's palace to speak to the sovereign to hang Mordecai on the wooden structure that he had prepared for him. And the sovereign's servant said to him, "Look, Haman is standing in the court." And the sovereign said, "Let him come in." And when Haman came in, the sovereign asked him, "What is to be done for the man whom the sovereign delights to value?" Now Haman thought in his heart, "Whom would the sovereign delight to value more than me?" And Haman answered the sovereign, "For the man whom the sovereign delights to value, let a royal robe be brought which the sovereign has worn, and a horse on which the sovereign has ridden, one with a royal crest placed on its head. And let this robe and horse be given into the hand of one of the sovereign's most noble princes. Let them dress the man whom the sovereign delights to value, and make him ride on horseback through the city square, and proclaim before him, 'Thus it is done to the man whom the sovereign delights to value.' And the sovereign said to Haman, 'Hurry, take the robe and the horse, as you have spoken, and do so for Mordecai the Yehudi, who sits in the sovereign's gate. Let no word fail of all that you have spoken.' And Haman took the robe and the horse, and robed Mordecai, and led him on horseback through the city square, and proclaimed him, 'Thus it is to be done to the man the sovereign delights to value.' Then Mordecai went back to the sovereign's gate, but Haman hurried to his house, mourning and with covered head. And when Haman related to his wife Zeresh and all his loved ones all that had befallen him, his wise men and his wife Zeresh said to him, 'If Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is from the seed of the Yehudim, you are not going to prevail against him, but certainly fall before him.' While they were still speaking with him, the sovereign's eunuchs came and hurried to bring Haman to the feast which Esther had prepared." Every chapter of this is just cliffhanger after cliffhanger. So if we remember at the end of 5, so his wife Zeresh and all his loved ones said to him, "Let a wooden structure be made 50 cubits high, and in the morning speak to the sovereign that Mordecai be hanged on it, and go with the sovereign to the feast, rejoicing." And the word pleased Haman, and he had the wooden structure made. So he is basically making a 300-foot structure to hang Mordecai on. And in chapter 6, broadly speaking, he now has to give Mordecai a royal robe. We still don't know exactly what happened between Esther and the sovereign and the dictation to Mordecai being, robed. But this is a massive humbling for Haman, because this whole book, not this whole book, but the last 3 chapters that we read, 3, 4, and 5, Mordecai won't bow down to Haman, and so Haman just wants him killed. All he wants is his complete obeisance, his complete surrender, and Mordecai's like, "I only bow to Yahuwah," and so yeah, he's not bowing to this man, and it's an interesting, it's interestingly, coordinative to the submissiveness to, that other one apostolically who you've set yourself apart with, right? Like, this is a different kind of submission from that I was just talking about with the 12 tribes, because that is brotherly submission, right? Like that, I want the best for you, and so I'm going to submit to you and your will, and you're going to submit to me and my will, because our wills are both being driven by the Holy Spirit, so we know the heart of each man. All right. On that night, the sleep of the sovereign fled, and he commanded to bring the book of the records of the annals, and they were read before the sovereign. So he wants the book of Chronicles of the Jews, and they're read before the sovereign Ahasuerus. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, 2 of the sovereign's eunuchs, the doorkeepers who had sought to lay hands on sovereign Ahasuerus. So, if we remember from chapter 2:21, in those days, while Mordecai sat within the sovereign's gates, 2 of the sovereign's eunuchs, Bigthan and Teresh, doorkeepers, were wroth and sought to lay hands on sovereign Ahasuerus. And the matter became known to Mordecai, who informed sovereigness Esther, and Esther spoke to the sovereign in Mordecai's name. And when the matter was searched into, it was confirmed, and both were hanged on a wooden structure. And it was written in the book of the annals in the presence of the sovereign. And so he thwarts a plan of the sovereign's eunuchs, castrated servants, to kill and form a coup against sovereign Ahasuerus. and Mordecai basically saves the king. And so this isn't the book of the Chronicles of the Jews. This is the records of the sovereign, because it said it was written in the book of annals in the presence of the sovereign, and they were read before the sovereign. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the sovereign's eunuchs, the doorkeepers who had sought to lay hands on the sovereign Ahasuerus. So this man can't sleep. He's basically being given, spirit and presence and thought by Yah, likely. And he says, open the book of the annals. And he's like, that Mordecai guy who saved my life. I remember this. And then the sovereign said, what has been done in value or greatness to Mordecai for this? And the sovereign servant who attended him said, naught has been done for him. But he never rewarded Mordecai. Mordecai saved his life, never asked anything in return, never received anything in return. He just did it. Because it was likely because it was the right thing to do. I surmise a lot in these readings, but sometimes I go back and correct myself. But what other motivation? Obviously, he's, his cousin is marrying the sovereign, and he is also. It's always good to find favor in the sovereign's eyes, but he didn't expect anything back. And Esther also says, hey, this guy Mordecai told me about, this plan to kill you. And this is Yah's timing at its perfection, because in chapter 2, Mordecai saves Ahasuerus. In 3, 4, and 5, Mordecai gets vilified by Ahasuerus' right-hand man, Haman. And then in chapter 6, when Haman's got a structure made to kill Mordecai, because he can't kill all the Jews, so he's just going to kill Mordecai at this point. Now the sovereign remembers Mordecai and says, we have to do something good for him. And the sovereign says, who is in the court? Now Haman had come into the outer court of the sovereign's palace to speak to the sovereign to hang Mordecai on the wooden structure that he had prepared for him. And this too, just this whole book is just a great movie. He's walking into the courtyard and he's like, Mr. Sovereign, Mr. Sovereign. And then the sovereign says, no, I speak first. Who? And he says, and the sovereign's servant said to him, look, Haman is standing in the courtyard. And the sovereign said, let him come in. Transition. And when Haman came in, the sovereign asked him, what is to be done for the man whom the sovereign delights to value? Now Haman thought in his heart, whom would the sovereign delight to value more than me? This is how pompous and arrogant this guy is. He's like, oh man, there's definitely nobody that the sovereign loves more than me, so I'm going to give a really good answer here. And Haman answered the sovereign, for the man whom the sovereign delights to value, let a royal robe be brought which the sovereign has worn, and a horse on which the sovereign has ridden, one with a royal crest placed on its head, and let this robe and horse be given into the hand of the one of the sovereign's most noble princes. Let them dress the man whom the sovereign delights to value, and make him ride on horseback through the city square and proclaim before him, thus it is done to the man whom the sovereign delights to value. So he's basically exalt this guy, dress him royally, and make him paraded around by the king's most noble princes, knowing that whoever is on this horse is truly a loyal servant of the sovereign. It's a good answer. Doesn't work out the way he planned. And the sovereign said to Haman, hurry, take the robe and the horse, as you have spoken, and do so for Mordecai the Yehudi who sits in the sovereign's gate. Let no word fail of all that you have spoken. And this is every I'm thinking Rob Roy, where it's the villain thinks that he's gonna get the crown and the prize, and then the good guy gets the crown and the prize, and he's like, wait, I thought nice guys finished last. And Haman took the robe and the horse and robed Mordecai and led him on horseback through the city square and proclaimed before him, thus it is done to the man the sovereign delights to value. Then Mordecai went back to the sovereign's gate, but Haman hurried to his house mourning and with a covered head. So Haman's forced to do this to Mordecai. He does it. Thus it is done to the man, the sovereign's delights to value. And like, how humbling this must have been. He did it, clearly. He did it exactly as it was ordered. But I imagine he wasn't too excited. And Mordecai goes back to the sovereign's gate, and Haman hurried to his house mourning and with a covered head. So he is highly embarrassed, covers his face in shame. And when Haman related to his wife Zeresh and all his loved ones all that had befallen him, his wise men and his wife Zeresh said to him, if Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is from the seed of the Yehudim, you are not going to prevail against him, but certainly fall before him. They tell him, look, if this guy's really a Jew, you're effed. You're effed. You are not going to prevail against him, but certainly fall before him. Nobody beats the Israelites. While they were still speaking with him, the sovereign's eunuchs came and hurried to bring Haman to the feast which Esther had prepared. And now the story's speeding up. They hurry to bring him. You know, all this is divine by Yah. You read this whole book and it's like step by step by step by step. He's changing the pace of things for the outcomes and occurrences and the properties to exist, that his will be done. You know, and these are not necessarily his people, but he's just using them. In that he's having them do the necessary things for the safety and I don't want to say esteem, but sustenance of his people. Okay. Chapter 7. And the sovereign and Haman came in to drink with the sovereigness Esther. And again, I'm just looking around for a vent. There is one there, because I know that sound travels through vents a lot. Sorry. And the sovereign and Haman came in to drink with sovereigness Esther. And again on the second day, at the feast of wine, the sovereign said to Esther, what is your petition, sovereigness Esther? And it is given to you. And what is your request? Up to half my reign, and it is done. And sovereigness Esther answered and said, if I have found favor in your eyes, O sovereign, and if it pleases the sovereign, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we have been sold, my people and I, to be cut off, to be killed, and to be destroyed. If we have been sold as male and female slaves, I would have kept silent, although the advisory could not make up the sovereign's loss. Although the adversary could not make up the sovereign's loss. Then sovereign Ahasuerus asked sovereigness Esther, who is he, and where is he, whose heart is set to do so? And Esther said, the adversary and the enemy is this evil Haman. And Haman was afraid before the sovereign and sovereigness. And the sovereign, arising in his wrath from the feast of wine, went into the palace garden. And Haman remained before sovereigness Esther, pleading for his life. And he saw that evil had been decided against him by the sovereign. And when the sovereign returned from the palace garden to the place of the feast of wine, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was. Then the sovereign said, also to ravish the sovereigness while I am in the house? As the word left the sovereign's mouth, they covered Haman's face. And Harbonah, one of the eunuchs, said to the sovereign, also, see the wooden structure 50 cubits high, which Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke good on behalf of the sovereign, is standing at the house of Haman? And the sovereign said, impale him on it. And they hanged Haman on the wooden structure that he had prepared for Mordecai, and the sovereign's wrath abated. I've never read this book, and it seems like so many movies have been made off of this, because this is exactly how, and this is the original, right? Like, there were no movies back in the time when Esther was written. There was no, there were no other books like this, there were books, but they didn't have the printing press. They had to hand write books. They weren't writing books like this, the records of the annals of the sovereign were written, but other things, they weren't just writing willy-nilly Stephen King books. And the sovereign and Haman came in to drink with the sovereigness Esther. And again on the second day at the feast of wine, the sovereign said to Esther, what is your petition, sovereigness Esther, and it is given to you, and what is your request? Up to half my reign, and it is done. So he says this to her a third time. He really means it. It's another feast of wine. And the second day at the Feast of Wine, and the sovereign said to Esther, "What is your petition, sovereigness Esther, and it is given to you? What is your request? Up to half my reign, and it is done." He still knows that she wants something, and he's going to give it to her. And sovereigness Esther answered and said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, O sovereign, and if it pleases the sovereign, let my life be given at my petition, and my people at my request." She's saying, she doesn't yet actually tell him that she's a Jew. She's a Yehudi. But she does ask for her life and her people's lives to be given. Save them. And my people at my request. And she's like, this is my request. Do this for my people. I am asking you to do this for my people. For we have been sold, my people and I, to be cut off, to be killed, and to be destroyed. If we had been sold as male and female slaves, I would have kept silent, although the adversary could not make up for the sovereign's loss. So she said, somebody wants to kill us, and if we were just going to be enslaved, I wouldn't make a big deal out of this. You know, slaves is slaves, but the adversary could not make up for the sovereign's loss. We have a whole bunch of people here who are working for you, and there's no reason for you to kill them, and so don't. Please don't. Then Sovereign Ahasuerus asked Sovereigness Esther, "Who is he and where is he whose heart is set to do so?" He doesn't really understand this, even though he has signed a decree. Chapter 3, verse 8, Haman then told Sovereign Ahasuerus, "There is a certain people scattered and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of your reign whose laws are different from all people, and they do not do the sovereign's laws. Therefore, it is not in the sovereign's interest to let them remain. If it pleases the sovereign, let a decree be written to destroy them, and let me pay 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who do the work to bring it into the sovereign's treasuries." And the sovereign took his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of the Yehudim. So Haman's dad is the enemy of the Yehudim. And I'm just now reading this, picturing him like with white hair, petting a cat probably. And the sovereign said to Haman, "The silver and the people are given to you, to do with them as seems good to you." He's like, whatever, if somebody's not obeying me, whack them. And the sovereign scribes were called on the 13th day of the first new moon, and a decree was written according to all that Haman commanded, to the viceroys of the sovereign, and to the governors who were over each province, and to the officials of all people, to every province according to its writing, and to every people in their language. It was written in the name of Sovereign Ahasuerus, and sealed with the sovereign's signet ring. So, Sovereign Ahasuerus signed off on this, and he doesn't even know it because it wasn't told that they were Jews back then. It's not told now still. I don't know that he fully understands what the Jews are and who the Jews are. And Esther said, "The adversary and the enemy is this evil Haman." Then Haman was afraid before the sovereign and sovereigness. So she points to him. It's just the three of them. She's made it in chapter 5, verse 8, "If I have found favor in the eyes of the sovereign, and it pleases the sovereign to give my petition and perform my request, then let the sovereign and Haman come to the feast which I make for them, and tomorrow I shall do according to the word of the sovereign." So she says this at a feast, and this is the tomorrow feast in chapter 7. And so now it's just the three of them. So she points to him. She says, "The adversary and enemy is this evil Haman, his right-hand man." And so now it's basically his boy and his girl that he's got to make a decision between. His right-hand man and his woman. And the sovereign, arising in his wrath from the feast of wine, went into the palace garden. And Haman remained before Sovereigness Esther, pleading for his life, for he saw that evil had been decided against him by the sovereign. So the sovereign runs out, he's pissed off. And he gets out of the house and he's like, And Haman remained before Sovereigness Esther, pleading for his life. He's like, don't do this. He's like, come on, let me live. He's just being a jerk off, Haman, and trying to plead with Esther like it's her decision. Ultimately, it's the sovereign's decision, but he knows who's really, he knows that anything that she asks can be done. And when the sovereign returned from the palace garden to the place of the feast of wine, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was. Then the sovereign said, also to ravish the sovereigness while I am in the house. As the word left the sovereign's mouth, they covered Haman's face. So he comes back in and he's cooled off, and so there's the way this scene is set, there is a possibility here. It's like he goes outside, catches his breath. He's like, what do I do? He's thinking about it. And then he comes back in and he basically sees Haman on the couch, and Haman looks like he's trying to, approach Esther. And the sovereign's like, also to ravish the sovereigness while I'm in the house? Like, so you're going to hit on my wife now too, bud? And which is totally the wrong idea. He's pleading for his life, but that's the way it looks. And so, this man is actually decently righteous, as far as it appears. I like the sovereign Ahasuerus. And so, as the word left the sovereign's mouth, they covered Haman's face. They snuff him. They don't put him in cuffs. They just straight gag him. Mafia style. And Harbona, one of the eunuchs, said to the sovereign, also, see the wooden structure, 50 cubits high, which Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke on behalf of the sovereign, is standing at the house of Haman. And the sovereign said, impale him on it. So, he already had to humble himself by putting Mordecai in a robe and on a horse. And they gave me a spinny chair. And so that's why I'm spinning around. He's already had to humble himself by giving Mordecai a robe and a horse, and now he's got this 50-foot wooden structure that he's going to hang Mordecai on, and the sovereign says impale him on it. So hang Haman on the structure that he built for Mordecai to be hanged on. And they hanged Haman on the wooden structure that he had prepared for Mordecai, and the sovereign's wrath abated. And that quenches the sovereign. Sovereign's wrath abated. It left him. It fled from him. It was settled. He was good with it. And this is, what a perfect, beautiful ending to this tale. Mordecai won't bow down to Haman. I don't know how many chapters. I think we have a couple more chapters, so I'm not going to go back through it fully, but Mordecai won't bow down to Haman, and then Haman has to humble himself to Mordecai, and then ultimately ends up the structure that Haman built to kill Mordecai is what is used to kill him. This is beautiful and wonderful as far as consequences of disobedience to Yah. Like real disobedience to Yah. Not like I'm an asshole, I'm a sinner. Like real trying to kill the people of Yah. On that day, Sovereign Ahasuerus gave to Sovereigness Esther the house of Haman, the adversary of the Yehudim, and Mordecai came before the sovereign, for Esther had explained what he was to her. And the sovereign took off his signet ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. And Esther appointed Mordecai over the house of Haman. And Esther spoke to the sovereign again, and fell down at his feet, and begged him with tears to put an end to the evil of Haman the Agagite, and his plot which he had plotted against the Yehudim. And the sovereign held out the golden scepter toward Esther, and Esther arose and stood before the sovereign and said, "If it pleases the sovereign, and I have found favor in his sight, and the matter is right before the sovereign, and I am pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to bring back all the letters, the plot by Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Yehudim, who are in all the sovereign's provinces. For how could I bear to see the evil coming to my people? Or how could I bear to see the destruction of my relatives?" And sovereign Ahasuerus said to sovereigness Esther and Mordecai the Yehudi, "Look, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and they have hanged him on the wooden structure because he laid his hand on the Yehudim. Now you write on behalf of the Yehudim as it pleases you, in the sovereign's name, and seal it with the sovereign's signet ring. For a letter which is written in the sovereign's name and sealed with the sovereign's signet ring, no one turns back." So the sovereign scribes were called at that time in the third new moon, which is the new moon of Sawan, on the 23rd day, and it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded to the Yehudim and to the viceroy and the governors and the princes of the provinces from India to Cush, 127 provinces, to every province in its own writing, to every people in their own language, and to the Yehudim in their own writing and in their own language. And he wrote in the name of sovereign Ahasuerus and sealed it with the sovereign's signet ring, and sent letters by runners on horseback, riding on royal horses bred by speedy mares, that the sovereign has granted to the Yehudim who were in every city to be assembled, and stand for their lives, to cut off, to kill, and to destroy all the power of the people or province that would distress them, little children and women, and to plunder their possessions, on one day in all the provinces, and sovereign Ahasuerus on the 13th day of the 12th new moon, which is the new moon of Adar. The copy of the writing to be made law in every province was announced to all the peoples, so that the Yehudim would be ready on that day to be avenged of their enemies. The runners riding on royal horses went out, hastened, and pressed on by the sovereign's command, and the decree was given out in the citadel of Shushan. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the sovereign, wearing royal garments of blue and white, and with a crown of gold and a garment of fine linen and purple, and the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. For the Yehudim there was light and gladness and joy and value. And in every province and in every city where the sovereign's command and decree came, the Yehudim had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land were becoming Yehudim, for the fear of the Yehudim had fallen upon them. Wow, that was chapter 8. On that day, sovereign Ahasuerus gave to sovereigness Esther the house of Haman, the adversary of the Yehudim. And Mordecai came before the sovereign, for Esther had explained what he was to her. So Esther tells Ahasuerus that Mordecai is her cousin, and that's how they have this relationship. And she also implicated him. She gave him the name in Esther 2:22. And Esther spoke to the sovereign in Mordecai's name. So he knows that there's some relation there, but he doesn't fully understand it, and he still doesn't know that the Yehudi are their people. And the sovereign took his signet ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. And Esther appointed Mordecai over the house of Haman. So all that was Haman's is given to Mordecai, and Esther is also doing the appointing. I want to note it there, the signet ring. I want to just look back and see on the 13th day of the 12th new moon. And all this starts chapter 3 in the first new moon, verse 7, which is the new moon of Nisan. So this is the 12th year of sovereign Ahasuerus, and we're going from the first new moon in 3/7. The plan is the 13th day of the 12th new moon, and then this plan gets thwarted on it takes, where was it here? Oh, well, we're not quite there yet, but in verse 9, at that time in the third new moon, which is the new moon of Siwan on the 23rd day. So about 2 months it takes. This guy was planning on doing this for a whole year, and it's interesting. That's interesting too, because how many times do we see, like, in horror movies, like, the killer's, like, just walking real slow, or like that guy always wants to toy with his enemy, and so it seems like they draw the whole thing out, as opposed to just, like, being quick, because they're taking in that power, they're taking in that control, they're enjoying that, as opposed to, just giving just doing the job. You know what I mean? Okay. And Esther spoke to the sovereign again, and fell down at his feet and begged him with tears to put an end to the evil of Haman the Agagite and his plot which he had plotted against the Yehudim. This is the ultimate how to text mom. Have you talked to your mother or father today? This is the, like, ultimate finding out that they are Yehudim, Yehudim, that now he knows that this is who he is, Yehudim, and yeah. She officially asks, stop the Agagites from killing the Yehudim. And the sovereign held out his golden scepter toward Esther, and Esther arose and stood before the sovereign. So that's a plot setter. It's not the actual questioning. But again, she comes to him, and he gives her the golden scepter, and Esther arose and stood before the sovereign and said, if it pleases the sovereign, and if I have found favor in the eyes in his sight, and the matter is right before the sovereign, and I am pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to bring back the letters, the plot by Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Yehudim who are in all the sovereign's provinces. She tells him that Haman has a plot to destroy the Yehudim, and he has a written decree. That's the word I was looking for. When I said dictation, dictant, it's a decree, to destroy the Yehudi, who were in all the sovereign's provinces. For how could I bear to see the evil coming to my people? Or how could I bear to see the destruction of my relatives? And that's how she tells them, they're my people. Then sovereign Ahasuerus said to sovereigness Esther and Mordecai the Yehudi, look, I have given Esther the house of Ammon, and they have hanged him on the wooden structure because he laid his hand on the Yehudim. So I already killed him. You're in control of his house at this point. Now you write on behalf of the Yehudim as it pleases you, in the sovereign's name, and seal it with the sovereign's signet ring. For a letter which is written in the sovereign's name and sealed with the sovereign's signet ring, no one turns back. So he's basically saying, now you write on behalf of the Yehudim. He's like, you have all the power at this point. He's like, you can say whatever you want, and you have the signet ring, and you can put my name on it, because you have taken my name at this point, and no one turns back the sovereign's name and a seal of his signet ring. That's it. You can do it. You know what I mean? Like, you're the authority. I'm just seeing like a manager. Obviously this is different, but this is the way I've experienced it in my life. Like, a manager comes to the owner and he's like, look, you have the credit card, you have the name tag, go buy what the store needs. So the sovereign scribes were called at that time in the third new moon, which is the new moon of Sawan, and on the 23rd day. And it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded to the Yehudim and to the viceroys, and the governors and the princes of the provinces from India to Cush, 127 provinces, to every province in its own writing, to every people in their own language, and to the Yehudim in their own writing and in their own language. And so the sovereign scribes take care of this. Like I said, this is the third new moon. It starts in the first month. This is the third month, and he's not planning on killing the Jews until the 12th month. And so the decree goes out, the letter goes out. Mordecai commanded to the Yehudim and to the viceroys and to the governors. So Mordecai writes this letter. Mordecai dictates this letter and the wording, not Esther. She says, so Mordecai has a signet ring, and Esther is appointed Mordecai over the house of Haman. So he starts doing he gives the orders. And he wrote in the name of sovereign Ahasuerus and sealed it with the sovereign signet ring, and sent letters by runners on horseback riding on royal horses bred from speedy mares. Not exactly sure what a mare is, but I think it's like a specialty species of horse, like a racing horse, and royally bred speedy mares. He wastes no time. He's like, make sure this gets to all of the Jews immediately. It's also interesting that Mordecai is writing this because now Esther trusts him, and Esther is still in submission to Mordecai. She still sees Mordecai as her superior, like as her father figure, as her covering, even though she's married to Ahasuerus. Mordecai kind of took the dad role, and she's still looking at him, to him for covering. And he writes it, seals it, sends it. Speedy mares. Royal horses. He uses the sovereign's royal horsemen to get this job done. Runners, in 3:15 it says, the runners went out, hastened by the sovereign's command and the decree which was given out of the citadel in Shushan. The sovereign and Haman then sat down to drink, but the city of Shushan was in confusion. So, as opposed to just the runners, he sends the royal army out. That the sovereign has granted to the Yehudim, who were in every city, to be assembled and stand for their lives, to cut off, to kill, and to destroy all the power of the people or province that would distress them, little children and women, and to plunder their possessions on one day in all the provinces of sovereign Ahasuerus on the 13th day of the 12th new moon, which is the new moon of Adar. So they all got this letter, and this is Mordecai sending the letter back out to all of them. Has granted to the Yehudim who were in every city to be assembled and stand for their lives. So he grants them for their lives. I'm trying to figure out the wording in this book sometimes, it's weird, but he grants them for their lives. Saves their life. We know that it's the 12th new moon of Adar, and that's the setting one day. He wanted to do it all on one day. He's like, we'll round up the Jews, we're going to kill all of them on one day. I mean, in that, imagine that, you know what I mean? I want them all put to death in one day, just the amount of this is a dark topic, but when you kill something, you're taking the life force out of it. And especially like the blood, right? Like in Cain and Abel, in Genesis 4:10, let's do 4:9. And Yahweh said to Cain, "Where is Abel your brother?" And he said, "I do not know. Am I my brother's guard?" And he, Yahweh, said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." Okay, so, and now you are cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. So the blood is crying out. You know what I mean? So there's life in the blood and in the breath. You know, we talked the other day, I think it was Wednesday, the Acts 5 video about the oxygenation, the breath being in the lungs and the oxygenation of the blood in the heart. And so the blood cries out because there's life in the blood, which is the breath, the oxygenation. The life is in the blood, cries out. And so basically where I'm going with this, because I don't know how else to say it, is basically the amount of power this guy's trying to absorb by killing off all these Jews in one day and just taking all of their life force in one day. And not to mention that they have the set apart spirit, the Holy Spirit. They are Yah's chosen people. They are the holiest of holy people, the set apart people unto Yahweh, and he's trying to kill them all and watch them die and take all their life force in one day. The runners riding on royal horses, that's written like in comma, so the runners, comma, riding on royal horses, said again, made known that these are royal horses, went out, hastened and pressed on by the sovereign's command. And the decree was given out in the citadel of Shushan. Pretty self-explanatory. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the sovereign wearing royal garments of blue and white, with a great crown of gold, and a garment of fine linen and purple. And the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. So the royal, the hasten, pressed on by the sovereign's command. The decree is given out in the citadel, and we see in the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad, and we read in 3:15, but the city of Shushan was in confusion. So this is the difference. They're like, why are we killing all these Jews? Versus, oh, look, the Jews are being saved. Yeah, go Jews. And he's wearing blue and white. Do we have blue and white? Anybody? Blue and white. Set apartness and purity. Royal garments of blue and white, with a crown of gold and a garment of fine linen and purple. Purple's also a royal color. So this man goes from basically sleeping at the sovereign's gate to now he's in a golden crown and blue and white and purple. For the Yehudim there was light and gladness and joy and value. They now found value in their lives. They felt like people again. They felt human again. Not that they were just going to be rounded up and cast out in one day. Slaughtered, killed. And in every province and in every city where the sovereign's command and decree came, the Yehudim had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land were becoming Yehudim, for the fear of the Yehudim had fallen upon them. So they have joy, gladness, a feast, and a good day. Gotta say it was a good day. Used to listen to a lot of Ice Cube back in my day. At least that song. Grew up on hip hop, grew up on rap. Yehudim, my man Hawkins from Brooklyn. We're gonna talk about my age too. We're gonna talk about, I don't know if he's from that part of Brooklyn, but we're gonna talk about some rappers tomorrow, see if he was into that. I think Jin is from the city too. He's Chinese, so I don't know. Maybe he knows Jin. I used to like Jin. Jin ran 106 in Park. Side note, Yehudim had joy, And many of the people of the land were becoming Yehudim. So people start to see how this worked out for the Jews. Like in 2 months, this guy goes from I'm going to kill all the Jews to now he's being killed by the sovereign. And people are like, yo, I don't know who these Jews are, but I want in on that. And the fear of the Yehudim had fallen upon them. Beautiful end through chapter 8. I can't believe that book still keeps going. So I'm excited to read this. I've read all the Gospels. I'm not gonna lie, Esther or Ezra and Nehemiah they were cool, but they just weren't like hitting. Esther's a beautiful story, which I really had not expected to be like that. So yeah, I'm gonna grab water. You grab yourself water as well. See, 12 tribes have communities everywhere. And I'm not used to being at one in New York, although other ones that I've been at, well, I've only really stayed with one in Missouri, Warsaw. And the other ones, like there's different water, I guess is where I'm going with this. And so like I'm drinking New York tap water, which I cannot do at home. But they don't have, I go with Saratoga water all the time. That's why you see me in Saratoga Park so often doing videos and stuff. But I'm not used to drinking New York tap water, and this is New York tap water. It's not terrible. Because I know Ithaca's got a lot of water, like it's a valley city. But still, not used to it. We're also going to be blessed to do Acts 6 today. I'm going to have some muffin though. I already brushed my teeth, but the muffins are banging. This is a cherry almond muffin. It's funny, I'm allergic to sesame. I think of this because, you know, some people might be allergic to almonds. I'm allergic to sesame. And so like they made me a special portion here because of course they were having sesame tonight, which usually somehow happens. Like it happened when I was in Warsaw, and it just happened the other day too. Somebody was making, it was like sesame something. Oh, on Shabbat, she made homemade hamburger buns and put sesame seeds all over them. It was the only thing with sesame the whole time. And so she like, so today they were making they make me like the special portion. She's grabbing the fish, and then they start going. She's like garnishes it with sesame on top. And we all just looked at her, and it was like so innocent and so like eureka moment. She was like, I can't believe I just did that. And I was like, you know how many times I've been making a sub and been like, okay, any modifiers, no cheese, cool. Sprinkle the mozzarella on top, and I'm like, fuck it, no cheese. So, yeah. I didn't even have to eat the muffin. I just had to tell you that story. Ready to go. Acts chapter 6. And in those days, when the taught ones were increasing, there arose a grumbling against the Hebrews by the Hellenists, because their widows were overlooked in the daily sermon. So the 12 summoned the group of the taught ones and said, it is not pleasing for us to leave the word of Elohim and serve tables. Therefore, brothers, seek out from among you 7 men who are known to be filled with the set-apart spirit and wisdom, whom we shall appoint for this duty. But we shall give ourselves continually to prayer and to serving the word. And the word pleased the entire group. And they chose Stephanos, a man filled with belief and the set-apart spirit, and Philip, and Prochoros, and Nicanor, and Timon, and Parmenas, and Nicolaus, a convert from Antioch, whom they set before the emissaries, and when they had prayed, they laid hands on them. And the word of Elohim spread, and the number of taught ones increased greatly in Jerusalem, and a great many of the priests were obedient to the belief. And Stephanos, filled with belief and power, did great wonders and signs among the people. But some of those of the so-called congregation of the freedmen, Syrians, Alexandrians, and those from Cilicia and Asia, rose up and disputing with Stephanos, but they were unable to resist the wisdom and the spirit by which he spoke. And they instigated men to say, "We have heard him speak blasphemous words against Moshe and Elohim." And they stirred up the people and the elders and the scribes, so they came upon him and seized him and brought him to the council. And they set up false witnesses who said, "This man does not cease to speak blasphemous words against the set-apart place and the Torah. For we have heard him saying that this Yeshua of Nazareth shall overthrow this place and change the institutes which Moshe delivered unto us." And all who sat in the council, looking steadily at him, saw his face was like the face of a heavenly messenger. Very short chapter today in Acts. The Father knows everything and how everything's going to work out. And all these Bible readings are nothing short of that. You know, from the exact 10 minutes that I got rained on to the fact that the rain held off when I was reading with Pat the other day, to the fact that I'm reading this at now it's 11 o'clock at night and everybody's asleep, and this was a short reading. Take it from the top, because Stephanos is probably my favorite character in the Word because of the simple, concise, direct representation that he has of Yeshua. There's really no guessing about it, so let's get into it. And it's not shown here, but it will be shown soon. Well, it starts here. "And in those days, when the taught ones were increasing, there arose a grumbling against the Hebrews by the Hellenists, because their widows were overlooked in the daily serving." So the Hellenist widows were overlooked in the daily serving of the Hebrews. And so the Hellenists start grumbling against the Hebrews. And at this point, the tall ones were increasing. There's, we saw day over day, 3,000 to 5,000. And there's 3,000 in Acts chapter 2. And in Acts chapter 4, the next day, 5,000. So they're increasing, doing daily servings. And the 12 apostles, not like, all the 5,000, but 12 original apostles, the group of the taught ones, and said, summoned the group of the taught ones. So the 12 summoned the 5,000 and said, "It is not pleasing for us to leave the word of Elohim and serve tables." So, he's like, "Why are you serving people anyway? We are serving God. We do not leave the word of Elohim and serve tables." And that's an interesting saying, because now it's like, I'm sure in this instance they're holy. They're the holy of holy at this point. There's 12 of them, and these are like the congregation, when people are selling their stuff and giving all, that all may prosper, which is it's a 12 tribes thing. That's what they do. They give up all their stuff and they just come here and work together for the benefit of the community and for the kingdom of Yah, because that's what they're being, is the kingdom of Yah. And I've done pettiness in my judgment of them previously, and so I'm here to look with a fresh lens at what they do. So the 12 summoned the group of the taught ones and said, "It is not pleasing for us to leave the word of Elohim and serve tables." Therefore, brothers, seek out from among you 7 men who are known to be filled with the set-apart spirit and wisdom, whom we shall appoint for this duty, but we shall give ourselves continually to prayer and serving the word. So 7 men filled with the set-apart spirit and wisdom will go out and serve tables. And the word pleased the entire group. And they chose Stephanos, a man filled with belief and the set-apart spirit, and Philip, and Prochorus, and Nicanor, and Timon, and Parmenas, and Nicholas, a convert from Antioch, whom they set apart before the emissaries. And when they had prayed, they laid hands on them. Stephanos is noted here as a man filled with belief in the set-apart spirit. So this man is filled. He's fired up. He's got that. He's like, he heard it and he's in. And there's actually a girl who basically just heard the gospel the way the 12 tribes had said it a week ago, and the moment that they spoke to her, she believed it. And that girl, she's quiet and she's doing what women do here, but she doesn't know what spirit she just allowed to enter her. She has no idea. She did not have a week ago. I can tell that she is like a newborn baby with this Holy Spirit and just being flooded with it. And it's beautiful. It is absolutely gorgeous to see the work that the Father can do and how full he can make somebody just instantly like that. I don't know if they can all recognize that. I don't know if she knows it, recognizes it, but that girl has a new heart, and it's just got it's very like raw. They prayed, laid hands on them, set before the emissaries. Stephanos is the only one that we get any real details on, other than Nicolaus, a convert from Antioch. And the word of Elohim spread, and the number of the tall ones increased greatly in Jerusalem, and a great many of the priests were obedient to the belief. Word spreads. This is the capital W word, which is interesting. We saw that in verse 2 as well, and the capital W word is Yeshua, as opposed to just the word. Yeshua, the spirit of Yeshua, the teachings of Yeshua spread, and the number of tall ones increased greatly in Jerusalem. Greatly, not gently. Gently? Greatly? And a great many of the priests were obedient to the belief. So even priests are starting to be like, yo, there's something going on here. This is not a man thing. This is exponential growth. And only Yahweh can be behind that. And Stephanos, filled with belief and power, did great wonders and signs among the people. He goes out. He's got the belief, and therefore he's got the power. Goes working great wonders and signs among the people. But some of those, so it needs to be noted too that this belief and this power is used for the love of others, for the servitude of others, for the signs that people come to Yeshua, and the wonders and the healing and the betterment of the people and the kingdom of Elohim, not just his own power. But some of those of the so-called congregation of the freedmen, Syrians, Alexandrians, and those from Cilicia and from Asia, rose up disputing with Stephanos, but they were unable to resist the wisdom and the spirit by which he spoke. So these guys, Syrians, Alexandrians, and Cilicians, and Asians, start arguing with Stephanos, and he is so filled up. I watched Bob do this the other day. I want to go back and cut it short of Bob, but I don't know, I don't want to bite his work, I mean, I guess I could just give him credit as his face and his talking, but it was the what's today? Today's the 21st, so the June 19th Across the Table with Bob live Bible reading. It was probably the last 20-30 minutes or so. going, like when he starts talking to this guy, is the guy's name in the live stream, the live chat, and he just, and not that he's doing it in like a beat him down way, but the fire and the zeal that Bob has, he's just so full of the Spirit. He knows an answer. He's letting the Spirit do the work. He knows the information, and the Spirit is drawing it out of him at an immense pace. He's so well spoken in this time, and I haven't quite seen him do like that. Like, it seems like he leveled up. So props to him. But disputing with Stephanos, but they were unable to resist the wisdom and the Spirit by which he spoke. They're unable to resist it. You get to a point where you just can't say no. There's just no way that you're gonna tell these that you're gonna argue with Stephanos. You're not gonna. He just knows the word, and he's so full of the Spirit that you can't resist it. Like, it's just so well said sometimes in the word. I don't even know how to explain it any better than the way that it's written. But you're unable to resist the wisdom and the Spirit by which he spoke. Like, unless you are, like, I don't even say cognitive dissonance, but you're choosing to say no to what you can feel is true. Then they instigated men to say, "We have heard him speak blasphemous words against Moshe and Elohim." And they're like, so now they become accusers, and they're like, these blasphemers, because they have no other real arguments, you know what I mean? It's like when people argue that we don't have to keep the Torah still. It's like, yeah, you just, like, I had a guy tell me that the whole Old Testament was done away with, including the prophecies of the prophets that haven't happened yet. And so it's like, okay, well, are they just lies then? Like, is the book wrong? If it didn't happen yet, and it's not gonna happen, and it's done away with, what do you mean? You know what I mean? So it's just it's a decided ignorance, a blindness to the truth. Or maybe Elohim has a purpose for it, which in this case, he does, which I'm not going to spoil, but you'll find out if you haven't read it. This book I've read, some of the Old Testament ones I have not, and most people are familiar with this story because it's a pretty big stepping stone in Acts. Verse 12, and they stirred up the people and the elders and the scribes, so they came upon him, seized him, and brought him to the council. He gets taken before the council. How do we end chapter 5? And daily in the set-apart place and in every house they did not cease keep 41. Chapter 5, 41. Then indeed they went rejoicing from the presence of the council, because they were counted trustworthy. They were counted worthy to suffer shame for his name. To suffer shame for his name. And daily in the set-apart place and in every house they did not cease teaching and bringing the good news, Yeshua the Messiah. David was a man after Yah's own heart, and he was a warrior. Exodus 15:3. The people are moving through the woods and they're singing. We'll start at Exodus 15. Then Moshe and the children of Israel sang this song to Yahweh and spoke, saying, I sing to Yahweh, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea. Yah is my strength and song, and he has become my deliverance. He is my El, and I praise him. Elohim of my father, and I exalt him. Yahuwah is a man of battle. Yahuwah is his name. He has cast Pharaoh's chariots and his army into the sea, and his chosen officers are drowned in the sea of reed. The depths cover them. They went down to the bottom like a stone. Your right hand, O Yahuwah, has become great in power. Your right hand, O Yahuwah, has crushed the enemy. And in the greatness of your excellence, you pulled down those who rose up against you. You sent forth your wrath. It consumed you like stubble. And with the wind of your nostrils, the waters were heaped up. The flood stood like a wall. The depth became stiff in the heart of the sea. The enemy said, I pursue, I overtake, I divide the spoil. My being is satisfied on them. I draw out my sword, my hand destroys them. So, verse 3, Yahweh is a man of battle. Yahweh is his name. I want to read all this with you. You did blow with your wind, verse 10, you did blow with your wind, the sea covered them. They sank like lead in the mighty waters. Who is like you, O Yahweh, among the mighty ones? Who is like you, great in set apartness, awesome in praises, working wonders? You stretched out your right hand, the earth swallowed them. In your loving commitment, you led the people whom you have redeemed in your strength. You have guided them to your set apart dwelling. Peoples heard, they trembled, anguish gripped the inhabitants of Philistia. Then the chiefs of Edom were troubled, the mighty men of Moab, trembling grips them. All the inhabitants of Canaan melted. Fear and dread fell on them. By the greatness of your arm, they are silent as a stone until your people pass over, O Yahweh, until the people whom you have bought pass over. You bring them in and plant them in the mountains of your inheritance, in the place, O Yahweh, which you have made for your own dwelling, the set-apart place, O Yahweh, which your hands have prepared. Yahweh reigns forever and ever. I like seeing your right hand in here because we know who's at the right hand of Elohim. And so Yahweh is a man of battle. So David is a warrior. And we see a lot of, I just don't want us, Christians to be represented as soft men shaken by the wind, because Yeshua wasn't and we're not to be. Count it all joy when you fall into various trials. There will be persecution, as we'll see soon, but man, 7's going to be a banger. I really hope that I have some help from these guys tomorrow, because there's a lot of quotes in here, and I think it'll make a great video to have brothers to talk about it, and sisters, should we be blessed as such. And so, yes, they are being shamed, and they're counting it as worthiness, but here he's just being brought before the council, and I don't want you to think that Solomon was a man of peace and the wisest man to ever live, but still peace is the way, but not being afraid to be men of battle also. I think it's just kind of an acceptance of the world, to where they're going to persecute you. Do your best. We're not ready to go to war yet, says the captain of hosts. Verse 13, and they set up false witnesses who said, this man does not cease to speak blasphemous words against this set-apart place in the Torah. For we have heard him saying that this Yeshua of Nazareth shall overthrow this place and change the institutes which Moshe delivered unto us. And it's funny that they're saying this, because basically they're saying that he's going to do away with the Torah, and that's impossible. And literally, if that's the accusation against him, the blasphemous accusation against him, the fact that the church still believes that the Torah was done away with, they clearly just have hidden this stuff from you. And that's why they don't want you to read your word, because all the truth is in here. And all who sat in the council looking steadily at him saw his face like the face of a heavenly messenger. So these guys are looking back at him, and they're like, this guy's an angel. You ever sat there and been like me? Like, me? No, I didn't do that. I'm an angel. But this guy literally has the face of a heavenly messenger. An angel. Speaking blasphemous words against this set-apart place in the Torah, for we have heard him saying that Yeshua of Nazareth shall overthrow this place and change the institutes which Moshe delivered unto us. Change the institutes which Moshe delivered unto us. That is the Torah. That is doing away with the Torah and overthrowing of the set-apart place. That is John 2:18 we'll start at. And the Yehudim answered and said to him, what sign do you show to us, since you are doing these? Yeshua answered and said to them, destroy this dwelling place, and in 3 days I shall raise it up. Then the Yehudim said, it took 46 years to build this dwelling place, and you are going to raise it up in 3 days. But he spoke about the dwelling place of his body. So when he was raised from the dead, his taught ones remembered that he said this to them, and they believed the scripture and the word which Yeshua had said.